Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Mritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tena Mam Pahi Nityam Tena Mam Pahi Nityam. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourself, O Lord, and protect us evermore from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Om Vishnur Va Tripurantako Bhavatu Va Brahma Surendrotha Va Bhanurva Shashalakshanota Bhagavan Buddhota Siddhota Va Ragadvesha Visharti Moharahita Sattvanukampodhyato Yasarvai Sahasamskrito Gunaganais Tasmai Namah Sarvada. The Supreme Reality and its messengers are known by various names in various traditions. But as for me, I offer my worship always to the one going by any name and belonging to any tradition, who is free from attachment and hatred, free from worldliness and delusion, who is filled with compassion for all living beings, and who is possessed of all noble virtues. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om Peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So this morning is question and answer Sunday, and so either you will ask me questions or I'll have to ask you questions. Okay, Shobha has a question right off the top here. So, and when you have a question, please wait for the microphone to come, so that because this is live streamed and also recorded. Okay, Shobha.
In the 4th chapter.
Is it on? Yeah, now it's coming.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Maharaj, in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there is a comment that in the ancient times only the kings received spiritual enlightenments, and because they were so heroic in their nature. And throughout the history, we see that only the heroic people, or that quality is so essential for a sadhaka to follow. I was wondering if you can comment on the heroic qualities of.
Yes. Now, first of all, he doesn't say that only the kings had it, but this knowledge was given to the kings and was passed down through the kings. And also in the Chandogya Upanishad, it says that this knowledge was known among the kings, among the royal people. So what you say is true. Just it wasn't that it was exclusively among the kings, but it was a knowledge passed down among the royal lineages in the, among the kings. And Swami Vivekananda used to point to that also, and say that there were two things important in that. One of them you referred to, and another was, I'll say the other first and then come back to your actual question about heroism and the need for heroism, the need for strength, etc. But first, the other point that Swami Vivekananda pointed out in Karma Yoga, that the kings of olden times were extremely busy. They were running a kingdom, and they were the central rulers. It was not a system where you had parliament and others taking care. The kings had to themselves directly take care, with the help of ministers, of course, but directly take care of their kingdom, and they had to be available to the people. And so the kings were very much engaged with the world, and yet they had the time to cultivate and to realize this high knowledge. And so Swami Vivekananda said that if this high knowledge could be cultivated by kings of olden times, then what excuse do we have for not cultivating it? We can't say that, oh, I'm too busy, I've got too much to do. The kings themselves were busy day and night. And kings of olden times also, in the Indian tradition, they had to be open to their people. Even up until recent times when there were kings in India, they were expected to open their court to common people to come and lay their problems before them. So that the king was seen, yes, the king had status, it's true. The king had power, that's true, but the king was also supposed to be the servant of the people. And that's why that in modern times much misunderstood. Earlier it wasn't misunderstood, but in modern times much misunderstood incident of Sita being banished to the forest. That the modern sentiment is that, well, Rama should have been a man and told everybody to go to hell, and I'm protecting my wife, and you're not going to tell my wife where to go. My wife is my wife, and I am the king, and she is going to be beside me, and you all get out of here. But no, the idea was not that Sita deserved what she got. She didn't deserve it. That's clear in the Ramayana. It's clear that Sita did not deserve banishment. But Rama didn't allow Sita to be banished. He didn't send her to the forest because he was weak. He didn't send her to the forest because he couldn't stand up for his wife, which he should have done. He didn't allow her to be banished to the forest for any other reason except that he was king and the people demanded it. And as the king, he couldn't rule unless he had the support and agreement of the people. And so it was because he was ruler that he allowed her to be banished. It was because he was strong that he allowed her to be banished. And again, the kings of that time were not autocratic rulers who were expected to tell everybody to, you do this and you do that. No, the kings had power. They had prestige, but they were expected to be the servants of the people. So that's why Sri Ram is regarded so highly, because he did things from the standpoint of dharma, not from the standpoint of I want to do this and this is my wife and you get out of here and you don't tell me what to do. No, that wasn't it. His decisions were made not according to personal whim, not according to what he understood was correct, but according to dharma. He knew that Sita was innocent, and yet he allowed her to be banished because that was the dharmic thing to do. Not because it was comfortable to him, not because it was comfortable to her, not because it was the best to children, but he at the larger picture, that what is in the interest of the kingdom and of all of the people concerned. So that's one point, and now I'll come to your point, but this point that this royal knowledge, as it's called, Raja Vidya, this royal knowledge which was passed down among the kings, among the kshatriyas, was developed among those who were so busy, so engaged with the world. And so this idea that, and this was the Advaita Jnana of the Upanishads. So this idea that arose later, because Advaita became the preserve of the sannyasis. And there were some great householder Advaitins also over the centuries, in the recent 1,000 years, 2,000 years. There were some great householder jnanis. But in general, it was considered that Advaita was for sannyasis. But no, that's not where it was developed. It was developed among the kings, people who were busy with the kingdom. And so that's Swami Vivekananda in many ways was going back to an earlier tradition where he felt that Indian civilization, in certain ways, though he had great love for everything in Indian tradition, but in certain ways it had gone away from the earlier roots. And so, again, in many ways, you can see that he's bringing the civilization back to the ancient path, the Vedic path, as I've said in the Gita class on a number of occasions. After Sri Krishna, Swami Vivekananda was the next great teacher of Karma Yoga. And whereas Sri Krishna was teaching Karma Yoga as a legitimate path in itself, not as later commentators said that it was something just preliminary to get out of the way so that you could practice the real Jnana Yoga or real Bhakti Yoga later. So he was coming back to the tradition where Karma Yoga was a path in itself. And so when he said, take these truths of Advaita and spread them in the marketplace, these truths of Advaita, of non-dualist Vedanta, must become practicable in everyday life. He was going back to the old tradition where these ideas were developed by kings who were very much engaged with the world. So now coming to specifically to your question about the heroic nature of kings, and because the kings were heroic by nature, they developed this Raja Vidya, this royal knowledge of non-dualist Vedanta, the Upanishadic wisdom. Yes, and that's why Swami Vivekananda always emphasized strength, that strength was what is necessary. He said that strength is necessary at the physical level, at the mental level, at the social level, and at the spiritual level. And by strength, he didn't mean just weightlifting and building muscle mass and all of that. No, but he meant an inner strength. That yes, at the physical level, be strong. Not through giving all of your energy to bodybuilding. No, and that's not what he meant. But be strong physically in a normal way. Be strong mentally. He said, never take in any idea which weakens you. Any idea which weakens you, then avoid it as poison. And that's because this knowledge, spiritual life in general, takes great heroism. When you look at the great saints of the world, whether they are Hindu saints or Christian saints or Sufi saints, saints of different traditions, Buddhist saints, you'll find that weak-minded people, and I don't mean uneducated. You can be uneducated, illiterate, and attain to the highest, as Swami Atmarupananda meant. But weakness of mind, that is, lacking in spirit, lacking in resolve, lacking in intention, etc. That none of the great saints were weak in that sense. All of them had great strength and presence of mind. They had great strength of character. They had strength of determination. And yes, some of them, like in the Christian tradition where humility was emphasized, they might have been humble in their demeanor, but inside was rock solid strength of character, strength of determination, strength of intentionality, where they were ready to push through all obstacles. So that heroic strength is essential. It's really essential to lead a good life here. If you want to have a good, happy life here, you have to be strong. I've said many times, and you'll hear me say many more times, that referring to that book, Old Age is Not for Sissies, and as I always say, life itself is not for sissies. That is for weak-minded people. Life takes great strength, great determination, great grit. And spiritual life being a subset of ordinary life, not something separate from ordinary life, but a subset of ordinary life, that takes even more strength. And so, again, as Swami Vivekananda said, whatever is weakening, that avoid as poison. That includes your own ideas that keep coming up in your mind. This sense of, why did I, all of your regrets, all of our regrets, all of our sense that, I'm not such a good person. No, I had done so many bad things. I'm, what can be expected of me? I don't even feel like I should meditate because I'm not a good enough person. What will God think of me? No, all of these ideas of weakness also we have to throw away. So any idea that weakens you has to be avoided as poison. That includes such ideas. that I'm not a good person, or I'm weak, or I'm helpless, or what can be expected of me, or how can I lead a spiritual life, and look at the things that I've done. No, whatever you've done, that's done. So stand on top of that. Don't lie under it. Don't use it as a rock that presses you down. No, stand on top of it and move forward. And I will be strong. I will do better. You make mistakes? Yes. As Swami Vivekananda said, what would life be without mistakes? It's because we make mistakes that we learn. One of the dangers of over-legislation in any country, of over-legislation, is that there's a tendency for legislators, people in government, politicians and so forth, to try to legislate away the possibility of mistakes. So that, for instance, and just to use one historic example of an obscure example on a minor issue, but it's a good example that comes to mind readily to me. In Ohio, there was a governor some decades ago whose daughter was tragically killed in a semi-truck, a big truck accident. And so the governor decided that this was such a tragedy, and it was a tragedy. It was a horrible thing to lose a daughter. That I will make the roads of Ohio so safe that there will be no more truck accidents. Well, you can't do that. And if you try to do it, you make ridiculous laws that just complicate everything. Because life has mistakes. People make mistakes. There are accidents. People get killed. So when a politician says, and this happened in New York also, I became familiar with this because of Ridgely Manor when we were developing. There was a hotel fire, and so the politicians said, well, we're going to make New York safe so that people don't die in hotel fires anymore. So they made overly strict regulations so that you're just contravening common sense. And so if you try to make life so safe that there are no mistakes, then you make life unlivable. Because life is full of mistakes. It's by making mistakes that we grow. So yes, of course, there has to be a balance. You can't say that there are no laws so that everybody can make all kinds of mistakes. No, you have to have a balance. But life includes mistakes. And so we have to allow people to make mistakes. We have to allow that. So when the mind tells you that, oh, I'm no good because I did this or I did that or whatever, no, that's part of the human condition. That's part of the human condition. I'll stand on top of it. Even if I've done the most heinous of sins, now I have realized that, I will stand on top of those and rise. What good does it do to do something awful and then spend the rest of your life saying, oh, I'm a miserable person, and thinking about it all the time? It only drives it deeper and deeper and deeper. So yes, we need to learn from our mistakes, not just keep repeating them just because we don't care. No, we need to learn from them. But we need to learn and then move on. Just a minute. And then I'll here and then there. But let me just finish this. So the heroic attitude is necessary. And so the kings, being heroic and being full of energy, they were able to develop this Advaita philosophy, which again sees the non-dual reality, which sees the reality behind all of the play of life. One other thing, let me add into that briefly, is that it takes someone who has the possibility of enjoying life. And that, of course, is a king, because they are well-to-do, they are powerful, and so they could spend all of their time, as many kings through history have done, just a profligate life, just enjoying the senses and so forth, becoming hedonists and so forth, entertaining their every whim because I've got the power to do so. They could do that. But it's also true, as Swami Vivekananda said, that the renunciation of a beggar means nothing. If a beggar renounces, the beggar doesn't have anything anyway. And so the beggar says, well, I don't have anything, so I might as well renounce and be a sadhu. At least I can get some food by begging it. No, that's not renunciation. Renunciation comes, whether the renunciation of a householder or the renunciation of a monk, that comes when you know that I could enjoy the world, but I want something better. I want something even better than that. And so the kings had that also, the power to enjoy and to live a good life in the ordinary sense. But no, they wanted something better because they realized, I've got it in my hand and that's not what I want. Oh, okay. So is this, there were two hands that came up at the same time. Is either one connected with the same? Oh, on the internet. Okay, then I'll come to you. Let me come first to Raji, because his hand was a little earlier. Just a minute. Let him give you the microphone.
Thank you, Swamiji. I have small questions, just three. One is, I have sent you an email on March 10th after the Sri Ramakrishna birthday puja, and I never received a response. My question is, should we wait for these question and answer sessions in the future, or would you be willing to respond to the emails also in the future?
I would be willing to respond, but I didn't, as long as I don't get too many. If I start getting a lot of emails, I won't be able to respond. But I didn't see your email.
Oh, so. Sorry about it. Okay.
Oh, okay. So did you send it to info@houstonvedanta.org, or did you send it to atmarupananda@gmail.com?
Atmarupananda.
Oh, okay. Then I may have gotten it at a time when I was busy and it got lost in the... Okay. But anyway, I didn't see it.
I understand it. The other two questions is relevant to that email. The first one is, after the puja, I really enjoyed the puja aspect. And at the end of the puja, naturally mentioned some comments about Narayani, and it gave me an impression you're referring to the Sri Ramakrishna. And that, another one is, when Sri Ramakrishna left the body, mother, I understand, cried, saying, Kali, Kali, where did you go? Then my question is, if Kali, I understand, is the Prakriti.
Oh.
And let me complete this.
Yes. Well, make it quick.
Yeah. If Kali is the Prakriti, does Kali have the power to give the liberation of the souls or self-realization? That is the question.
Okay. So no, Kali here is not Kali is Prakriti, but not in the sense of yoga or Sankhya. In yoga and Sankhya, Prakriti is just a dead, insentient nature. That's not Kali. The Sankhya philosophy and yoga philosophy, which are associated, there are two major realities. One is Purusha and the other is Prakriti, and they are separate. And so Purusha is consciousness, awareness, intelligence, etc. Intelligence in the sense of consciousness, not in the sense of mental intelligence, functioning, and so forth. And Prakriti is just a dull, dead, insentient matter. Even though all of the changes we see and the creation of the world and all of that, according to them, comes through Prakriti, but it's an unconscious process. So that's not Kali. Kali means, Kali is in the Vedantic sense, of that consciousness which is not separate from Prakriti, but the consciousness, there's the consciousness of Brahman, what the yogis and Sankhya philosophers call Purusha, which sometimes we may call it Purusha, but we call it Brahman. There's Brahman, and then there is Maya. And Maya is not separate from Brahman. Maya is the power of Brahman. And so Kali is that. Kali is the power of Brahman, the manifesting power of Brahman. Kali, therefore, because Maya is not separate from Brahman, Kali is also Brahman. So to a worshipper of Kali, she is both the personal deity, Ishwari, God, whom we worship, who responds to our prayer, who responds to our worship, and so forth. And she's also the absolute. Sri Ramakrishna used the example of the snake. The snake, when it's lying still, and the snake when it's moving, it's the same snake. And so the snake when it's still, that's an analogy of Brahman. just a pure consciousness, no spandana, no movement, no vibration, no creation, no world, no individual souls, nothing, just absolute transcendent Brahman, non-dual, beyond time and space, no world, no creation, nothing. And that same Brahman, when through the power of Maya, the vibration begins within it. Then that same Brahman becomes creative and manifests this whole universe. So Kali is that power of Brahman. So we have to be very careful that Prakriti of Sankhya and Purusha and Sankhya and Yoga does not apply to Vedanta. There's a lot of similarity between Sankhya and Vedanta. Vedanta accepts most of Sankhya cosmology, but in the matter of Purusha and Prakriti, they're fundamentally different. So when you say that is Kali just Prakriti, no, not Prakriti in that sense. Kali is pure consciousness, but that pure consciousness which is associated with the power of Brahman, Maya Shakti, which manifests as this universe. And so, yes, can she give liberation? Yes, she is the one who gives liberation. Brahman doesn't give liberation. In Brahman, there's no world. There's not even the memory of a world, not even the idea of a world. So how can Brahman give liberation? Brahman doesn't give, Brahman doesn't take. Brahman just is. Transcendent reality, not beyond the world and all possible worlds and all ideas. But it's Ishvara, God, or Ishwari, the Devi, who, because the two are the same. Whether you see this world as the dance of Shiva, or whether you see it as the dance of Kali, or whether you see it as the play of Vishnu, or the play of Krishna, or Sri Ram, or whatever, it's speaking of the same reality. So speaking of Kali, she is God, as we speak of God, not Prakriti as the Sankhya and Yoga philosophies describe.
So when we go to Nirguna, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, what happens? Who gives the liberation?
Well, that according to the strict Advaita Vedantins, the strict non-dualist Vedantins, the one that gives that no one gives liberation, it's what happens is that the self is self-revealing. And so when the mind becomes absolutely still, and when the teacher gives the knowledge, Tattvamasi, thou art that, then the recognition of the pre-existing truth flashes. And so in one sense, the Guru gives the knowledge in traditional Advaita Vedanta. In another sense, it's the self itself which self-manifests. That once the obstacles to our knowledge, once avidya, is attenuated enough, then the reality of the self, the reality of Brahman shines forth. And then the world disappears and Brahman alone remains. But from another perspective, which is also accepted by devotional Vedantins, it's the Divine Mother, which again is not different from Krishna or Rama or the male deities either. But the Divine Mother is the one who unlocks the knowledge of Brahman. It's only through the grace of the Divine Mother, and the reasoning there is that how can an individual soul, a limited soul with a limited being with a limited mind and limited ego and all of that, how can they realize the infinite? The ego can't do it. And so something from the other side has to come. And so the Divine Mother is the one who controls the destiny of beings. And so she unlocks the knowledge of Brahman. So that's on the devotional side. On the knowledge side, those who don't go through the idea of God, who don't think in those terms, then it's the self-revelation of the self. When the mind becomes so pure that avidya has become almost transparent, then the light of the self shines forth and then you attain it. So it's not even there, it's not that Brahman gives you enlightenment, because Brahman doesn't give anything. It's just that the light of Brahman can no longer be hidden. It flashes forth.
So this mother devotion you're mentioning.
Well, this will be the last, just
right.
Because there are other people that want to ask
This
questions.
mother devotion you're mentioning is the puja is one aspect of it. Is it mainly puja done mainly to have the person to develop the concentration towards the meditation?
Okay. Puja is done in order to, and then we'll go to Surenji and then to this gentleman here. Puja is done, puja doesn't need to be done by anyone. But those who like puja, and many do, myself included, then puja is a way of relating ourselves to God. When we God, we want to, there's a natural human tendency to want to worship, to want to relate ourselves. And puja is a good way to do that. So yes, Surinji.
This
Yes.
question is from our internet listener, Sujit
Yes.
Datta. Will you please explain the Ananda aspect of Satchit Ananda?
The Ananda aspect of Satchidananda, yes. Let me, there's several things I can say. I'll try to say briefly so we get to the next question also, but it's a good question. And Rauji's question also is very good, as was Shobha's. All of the questions today have been very good. So Satchit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, we say that that is the nature of Brahman. First, it would be good to say that that formulation of Satchit Ananda is not in the old Upanishads, but it's taken from the old Upanishads. There's not one place where in the Upanishads a rishi says that Brahman is Satchidananda. It says, like in the Taittiriya Upanishad, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. They are Satyam, truth, Jnanam, knowledge, Anantam, infinity is Brahman. And so taking that and somewhere else where Brahman is called Sat, and somewhere else Brahman is called Ananda, then that was a traditional formulation put together in the Vedanta tradition, post-Upanishadic tradition, although I'm sure it's in some of the minor Upanishads which came much later. As you know, there's even a Allah Upanishad, which came after the Muslim period in India. And so these three were put together, but there was a reason why these three were put together. Sat being existence itself. Everything that we see, if we abstract out the one common feature of everything anywhere, in this universe, any possible universe, all possible universes, the one thing that you can abstract out as common is existence. Everything is. That which is not isn't an it. It's not. You don't have to consider something which is not, because it's just not even an imagination. So everything has isness. And so Sat is the common feature of everything. But then the question comes, what is that Sat? Then the discovery comes, and I won't go through all of the logic nor all of the experiential part, just enough to frame out the idea to get to the actual question. That Sat, you begin to realize, as the mind becomes clearer, you realize that Sat is of the nature of Chit. Sat is of the nature of Chit. It is consciousness itself. What is existence? Is there any such thing as existence which is unconscious? It can't be. It can't be. The only thing that we're aware of is awareness itself. It's through awareness that we know that which is. That which is exists within awareness. And so eventually you come to the realization, the understanding, and the experience that existence and consciousness are the same thing. There's no existence outside of consciousness. You say, well, Swami, this table, what about the rock out there? Where do you see the rock out there? Where do you see it? You see it in your consciousness. It's not outside of consciousness. So eventually you come to the understanding and the perception and the realization even further along that existence is consciousness. But then what about bliss, Satchidananda? Bliss is the hardest, and that's why it's a good question, because Sat and Chit, Sat we experience everywhere. Eventually we realize that I'm experiencing Sat through in Chit, that there's nothing but Chit. That's all that I know, consciousness. That's all that I know. That is, knowing itself is consciousness. But Ananda, we think, well, I see Sat everywhere. I can understand that consciousness is the reality everywhere. With a little work, I can get there and see that it's quite logical and necessary. But Ananda, we don't see Ananda everywhere. We see that once in a while we're happy, a lot of times we're unhappy. So how is Ananda, bliss, how is that equivalent to Sat and Chit? In fact, Ramanuja, the great philosopher of devotion, he said that Ananda is the hidden aspect of Satchidananda, that only in realization you realize the Ananda aspect. Now, Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, he was a Vedantin also, but Advaita Vedanta doesn't accept that position philosophically. It may be good for a practical, everyday explanation, a non-philosophical explanation, but Vedanta says that what is Sat, that is the same thing as Chit, and that thing is the same thing as Ananda. It is bliss itself. So the Taittiriya Upanishad said that this whole universe comes out of Ananda, out of bliss. It exists in Ananda, and it returns to Ananda. There's nothing but Ananda. But that we don't see. We can see that everything is Sat. Eventually we can see with a little, I'm not talking about realization, though that will come eventually, but even just in our understanding, we can understand with a little work that everything is Chit also. But Ananda, how to see that when I'm not really so happy? Once in a while a little bit happy, but usually sort of funky. So how to see that Ananda is the reality also, which is that Sat itself. I see Sat. I see everything existing, but where's the Ananda? One way to understand this is, and it'll only be, I think it'll only be, and this is where Ramanuja had a point, a good point, that the full realization of Ananda comes only with realization, only with experience. It's the clouding of Maya which keeps us from experiencing the Ananda aspect. The Ananda which is Sat and Chit. The reason we don't experience Ananda now is that we're not fully understanding Sat and Chit in their full reality. We're experiencing them through a cloud, and that cloud is what keeps us from experiencing them as bliss. When we realize them as they are, then we will realize that, oh, Sat is bliss. Sat is Chit, which is bliss, which is Sat, which is Chit, which is bliss, which is Sat, which is Chit, which is bliss. They're all the same thing, exactly the same thing. But because now we're not seeing Sat clearly, we're not seeing Chit clearly, we don't see Ananda clearly also. And so Ananda is the most hidden of the three, and there's where Ramanuja had a point. He made the point in a somewhat gross, by gross I mean in a sort of a clumsy philosophical way, but there is a point to what he said. So how can we understand the bliss aspect now? One thing is that you find that if a person has a life-threatening situation, either a disease or an accident or something where they're hovering between life and death, and they could go either way as far as they know and as far as the doctors know. They could go either way, into life or into death. Suddenly everything here becomes very dear. Or especially if we're hovering on the brink of death and then we come back, then suddenly the whole world looks so dear to us. We realize that I was about to lose all of this. I was about to lose all of this. Normally we're focused on, oh, I don't like this person, I don't like that person, this person is so nasty, this person is so bothersome, I don't like this thing, this food, I don't like the taste of it, this color, everybody paints everything in that color and I hate that color, and this is, why are there mosquitoes, and I'm afraid of snakes, and all these things I don't like, and those things I don't like. And so where's the bliss? But threaten somebody, if the person believes you have the power, threaten the person that, well, okay, I can remove it all and I can remove you also. I can just take your life away and it'll all be over. Then suddenly the person, no, I don't. Then suddenly even a disagreeable person, they say, oh, I can live with him happily. Just leave me alone. Don't kill me. And so we see that behind all of our likes and dislikes, there is, why are we attached to the world? Why do we want to live in the world? Why do we not want to die? When our life is, there's so much misery in life, why is it that we don't want to die in spite of all the misery? Because the world is actually dear to us. Why is it in India there was a beautiful practice of when, especially those who lived near the Ganges or another sacred river, that when they were dying, they were taken to the waters of the Ganges to be close to it. Why were people traditionally laid down on the earth in their last moments, so that they die touching Mother Earth, because Mother Earth is so dear. It's because of the dearness of this life. And so the Ananda aspect is there, but it's hidden by the waves of the mind, hidden by the likes and dislikes, hidden by all of our little petty concerns and so forth. So again, even the Sat and the Chit are partially hidden, because we can understand that everything is. But what it is, we can't understand. Then we get the understanding that, well, everything that is, it's connected to consciousness. But what consciousness is, we don't really know. We have some intuitional feeling for it. We have some intuitional feeling for what Sat is, but no clear idea. And so it's really, we eventually find it's the same with bliss. That bliss is there in everything, and that's why I'm attached to life in spite of all of my dislikes for so many things and discomforts and problems and all of that. When you say, okay, we can take it all away from you, I'll just shoot you in the head and it'll be all over. You say, no, please don't do that. I want to stay here. I want to live. And if you say that, well, sometimes people do commit suicide, yes, but people commit suicide not because they want to lose this. They commit suicide because out of desperation, there's so much noise in their head, there's so much noise in their hearts that they can't get any peace. They can't find any peace, and they just want to put an end to it as the only way that they can think of getting some peace. But it's not because this is not dear. And that's why they're in a tragic situation, which is in a deep state of confusion, because they're about to lose this which is fundamentally dear to them. So Ananda is consciousness, which is bliss. One other thing let me say, and then I'll come to this gentleman's question. Just a brief thing so you can already take the microphone over here. That is that, well, we sometimes think that, well, some people hate themselves. No, they don't. Nobody hates themselves. Everybody has a fundamental love for themselves. What they hate sometimes, and when they say that, oh, I hate myself, I'm such a bad person, what they really mean is that I don't like the things that I've done. I don't like the things that I've thought. I'm so unhappy about my upbringing or something like that. But existence itself, no, that is dear to everyone. That's even to the suicide, that's dear to them. And that's why they're in such a tragic contradiction, because between love for themselves and the intolerable pain in their minds, that the only way they can get over that contradiction is just to snuff themselves out. But it's not because they don't love themselves. Everyone, and you also find that as you come closer to self-awareness, as you become more self-aware, you become more joyful. The closer you pull back to the self, which is Sat and Chit, you find that is Ananda. Just to rest in the sense of the self, you begin to feel a joy which you never felt before. And so then you see the nature of Ananda. And all of our ordinary joys are very dim reflections of that supreme joy. Dim reflections of it. Even our happiest moments in ordinary life are very dim, shadowy, insubstantial reflections of that infinite joy. So now this gentleman here, get the microphone to him, please, right here. No, you're just past him.
Opportunity.
Yes.
So I have two questions. One is, I read it in Bhagavad Gita, there should not be any discrimination according to the caste.
There should be no what?
No discrimination. And question is, physical being itself, are we supposed to worship the quality of Ram, or like God Ram has physical being, qualities of Lord Krishna, or like Lord Krishna has physical being?
First, on the question of caste, yes. In fact, we just in the class with where Sri Krishna says that the person of knowledge sees the same reality in all, an alerted Brahmin as well as a Chandala, etc. That see the same reality in everyone. Swami used to also say this, that we should see the same reality in all. We shouldn't discriminate between highs and lows. So where do you not find a place or a country where social institutions have not been abused? You can't find one. So why is that in Hindu society? It's like asking, well, why is there racial tension in the United States? The United States is founded on ideals of the all men, using it gender neutral. All men are created equal, and yet there's discrimination. So it's because there's an ideal, and then there are people. And people struggling to get to the ideal in their imperfect ways. And so you find in any society, including in Hindu society or American society, some people who rise above the ordinary human weaknesses and realize an ideal. But you find the masses of people, for them the ideal is a distant thing that they rarely think about. And only allow themselves to, because their concerns are more with attaining power, enjoyment, and so forth. And so those ideals don't illuminate their everyday life. And so what we want is to make the ideal real. That is, if it's true that the same Brahman is in everyone, and once we've understood that it is true, then let me try to see that in my everyday life. Let me not make excuses for my liking some people and disliking other people. Let me not make excuses for hating certain people or let me not make excuses for thinking that some people are lower than I am. No, if I have that ideal that the same Brahman is manifested in all, let me try to live according to that. I can't make society live according to that, because society is a huge thing and there's so many dynamics working in the world. But you find in Hindu society throughout the ages that contrary to what most people outside of Hinduism say about Hinduism, that Swami Vivekananda said over and over that reform in India always came through religion. And there were great saints who arose again and again throughout thousands of years who opened religion to everyone. But then the weight of society closes back down, and people begin to do the same things. But again, a great saint comes and opens society to all. But human weakness is present everywhere, and so you find in every country, wherever you go, you find basically the same thing. You find different institutions, different expressions of ideals and things, but you find the same basic human weaknesses. And so the problems that are found in India, you find them everywhere else also. And though, as Swami Vivekananda said, Hinduism had the greatest ideals, which were the greatest ideals for society and for individuals and for the spiritual aspirant as well, that the society at large had not done well at manifesting those ideals. But that can be said of any country. What's that? Never end, Swamiji. That's a good question. Swami Vivekananda said, and I refer to him because I respect his opinion, because he had far deeper insight and knew history much better than I, and deeper spiritual insight than mine. So that's why I refer to him. He said, and it makes sense, that society would never be perfect. Because at this level, there's always a mixture of good and bad. Just as we have heat and cold, so there's good and bad, and so they're high and low. So there's this plane of life is a plane where differentiation is everywhere, and so we see differentiation everywhere. And so in that sense, there'll never be a complete equality where everybody has exactly the same and everybody is treated exactly the same, just because this world is a world of lost balance. That's what makes the world. That's what makes creation itself, is lost balance. But at the same time, Swamiji said, and you can see this also is true to experience, but he just stated it in an easy to understand way. That through time, you find periods of relative greatness, where the golden periods of history, and then you find times of great darkness in history, and then times of greatness followed by times of darkness. Everything in this world happens by wave-like motion, sometimes better, sometimes worse, sometimes greater, sometimes lesser. And so in history also, so he believed that a time was coming of a great widespread spirituality and the great widespread realization of these ideals. He felt that the time, he didn't give a timeline, but he said that we're moving into that time now. It may take 2 or 3 centuries or so, or more, or less. But that society was moving, he said that it was because of the ideals of democracy. Not the present institutions of political institutions and governmental institutions we have, but because of the ideals of democracy, which people all over the world are inspired by. Not every person, but all over the world. In every country you find that people want to have a say in things. Nobody is willing to be pushed down by others. When they are pushed down by others, they react and they say, no, I too am a man, I too am a woman, I want to have a say also. I also have a voice. You find that all over the world now. So Swamiji felt that because of that, that there was this desire for self-actualization, for becoming a full human being. And along with that, he said, would come widespread education. The spread of education, which was always the preserve of a few people. Now it's being spread wider and wider. Even there you find efforts to restrict education or to dumb down education, because what we really need are people who can just work in factories and so forth, so why should we spread so much education? But no. So he said that gradually the education would spread wide and far, and that more and more people would become aware of their spiritual dignity. And then they would begin to stand on that and demand. Swamiji told in India, he said several times in his speeches in India, he said, to you, the Brahmins of India, he said, and this is not an exact quote, but it does represent what he said. To you, the Brahmins of India, I say that give your cultural riches, give your cultural knowledge, your arts and sciences, give it to the common people, to high and low, give it to everyone. Because if you don't, then tomorrow they will put their foot on your neck and take it from you. So now you have a chance to give it to them. Give it to them freely. Give it to them out of love. Give it to them because you want to share it. Because if you don't, then they'll step on your neck and take it, to grab it out of your hands. And that we see happening. And so, so yes, it's not that everything will always be as bad as it is now. There are better times. But nothing will ever be perfect. There'll still be mosquitoes, there'll still be some kind of disease, there'll still be some kind of problems, and there'll be good and bad people. But just in the large picture, there will be a golden period. And that will last for maybe many centuries, but then there'll be another decline when things will go back to, because again, everything happens in a wave-like motion in the individual person and in the macrocosm as well. So now your other question was, you said you had 2 questions. I forget the...
Are we supposed to worship the qualities?
Oh, yes. Okay, I got it. Yes. Are we supposed to worship the qualities of, should we worship like Sri Ram, as Sri Ram, the human incarnation and who lived and did so many things, or Sri Ram as God, as Ishvara, with the transcendent? We can do both. We can do both. We can do either or both. That is, Why do we worship someone like Ram? Why do we worship someone like Krishna? Why do here in this temple we worship someone like Sri Ramakrishna? It's because they made visible the divine nature in their human life. In their human life, they made visible the divine nature. And so by seeing them, by reading about their lives, by reading about their deeds and so forth, we see what divinity means in human terms, translated into human terms. The great teachers like Rama, Krishna, Jesus, Buddha, Sri Ramakrishna, they made visible in human terms what God is, in terms that we can understand. We hear that God is love. Well, God, first of all, is G-O-D, is just a word to us. And unless we've become saints ourselves, it's just a word to us, a concept. And love is L-O-V-E, just a word to us. Now, all of us have experienced love. But when we say God is love, you're saying G-O-D is L-O-V-E. And not much more than that. But when we see a Jesus, when we see a Buddha, when we see a Ramakrishna, a Rama, a Krishna, then we understand what divine love means. What do we see? What the grace of God means? What the divine love means? And so, the incarnations, the great avatars, they translate into human terms, or into fish terms and tortoise terms and varaha terms for the other avatars. But for the human avatars, they translate into human terms what God means in human terms, so that we can understand it. So we can worship Sri Rama as the Sri Rama who lived in Ayodhya, who went to Sri Lanka, etc. We can worship that Rama, or we can worship Rama who is that which incarnated as Sri Rama, that is God himself, the ideal Sri Rama who lives in an ideal realm of consciousness and who still lives there. Rama's not walking around on earth now, but Rama still exists. Rama, as the ideal, is still real, an ideal which is real, which is approachable, to whom we can pray and who answers our prayer. And so both are good. We can emphasize one or the other, or we can blend the two. That doesn't matter. But why do we worship these? Why is Sri Ramakrishna's picture there and not my picture? Because Sri Ramakrishna was worshipable, worshipful. By worshiping him and using him as the same as I would say for Rama, Krishna, Jesus, Buddha. By worshiping someone like him, I find that I can realize the highest. You put my picture there and let people come and do worship, and first of all, nobody would want to, but if you got some fools that were willing to do it, they'd do it, but they wouldn't realize God. But by worshiping a great soul like that, because they continue in their personal identity, continue to be reachable, continue to respond to us, and so they continue to have the power to give us liberation by worshiping them. A person can worship Sri Ram and come eventually to the point of liberation, and they will feel. They will know, not just feel, not just imagination, but they will know that it was Sri Ram who opened the gates of liberation to me, who gave me salvation, who opened the gates of enlightenment to me. So that's why people like this are worshipped, and not just ordinary human beings. So whether we think of their human life or whether we think of them as their divine glory, as images of God, it doesn't matter. So time is up. Okay, it has to be very quick. Okay.
You said that use your analogy, put your picture. Nobody, it won't work. But hasn't it also been proven that think of God in a stone, that also works? So if people come with your picture there and pray to you as God, not as Swami Atmarupananda, but the essence of God, that should work, right, Maharaj?
I would feel sorry for them if they did that. you can realize God in the stone. Swami Vivekananda said that if you concentrate your mind on a black dot, you can attain to samadhi. But it won't be the experience that the black dot gave me samadhi. It will be that I concentrated my mind so much on the black dot that my mind came together and attained to samadhi, and the black dot was just an accidental focal point. And so with a picture of someone like me, an ordinary person up there, yes, you could, but you would feel that I had attained what I attained because my mind became so focused. Not that there was grace coming to me from this silly picture up on the altar. So, but with an incarnation, it's different, or with a deity, it's different. Okay, so we'll stop here. Those question and answer Sundays are my favorite because there's nothing to prepare and nothing I could prepare because I don't know what you're going to ask. And then the questions today, all of the questions were very good from beginning to end. So let me give a closing chant and then I'll give announcements after the chant. Om madhuvatartayate madhuksharanti sindhavaha madhvirnasantoshadhihi madhunaktamutoshasi madhumatparthivagum rajaha madhudyaurastu navita madhumanno vanaspatir madhumagum astu suryaha madhvirga bhavantunah. Om madhu, om madhu, om madhu. For us who seek the truth, may the winds blow sweetly, may the rivers flow sweetly, may the herbs yield us sweetness. Sweet be the night and the break of day. Sweet be the very dust of the earth. May the heavens pour down sweetness upon us. May the trees, lords of the forest, bear us sweetness. May all the directions pour forth sweetness. Oh, sweetness, sweetness, sweetness. So for announcements this week, classes will be as usual on